Thank you for tuning back in to Pave the Way. Brent and I are here today, and everyone has heard the scripture reference, or a lot of people know the reference that basically that we're all clay being formed by a master potter. We're being formed each day into who we have the potential to be and who we're going to be in the future. And I want to talk about that reference to, being molded and really being turned into something that you're not currently. For me, it's a lot of shifting your frame and shifting mindsets. Sometimes we go through things that are really, really high, like really good things that just get us on the mountaintop where we feel amazing. And then there's the valleys that come right after where, it cycles down and we feel like, wow, what is happening? Why am I here? What is this? You could get, maybe that's where the fear is, the pain, anxiety, whatever you have going on in your life, whether you're a person who stays at home with their children, or whether you're a person that has two businesses, or maybe you're an employee just looking to make a shift in your own life to get into business ownership. We are constantly being remolded and being turned into a different character and a different person. And for us, we talk a lot on here about spirituality and about how we're aligned with God and how we read the Bible and things like that. Well, He's always working on us. But sometimes the working on us looks like, sometimes it's something really awesome, like having your first child. And sometimes it's something really tragic, like say a death in the family or the death of a friend, or something that's, something you can't necessarily control. So when I look back at all the hard times that I went through, whether it was business or personal, we've had times in our business where we were sitting down to maybe fire somebody. That's not really that fun, but through cases like that, through events, your business comes out even stronger on the back end. Like once you go through the trial, once you go through either firing someone or looking at everything and reanalyzing your situation, we always get stronger. But I can remember so many times that remolding period and how painful it can be.
Absolutely.
So do you have anything that basically talk about being remolded, but also just like when we go through and experience these trials, because we talk a lot about business, but there's trials that you can suffer through like on a daily basis.
Yeah. And I think for me, we talk about it all the time in like our Bible studies and our, small group. It's having an eternal mindset. What? Having an eternal mindset? Yeah, having an eternal mindset. So when you have an eternal mindset, going back to the spirituality that he was talking about, the things of this world don't really affect you as much as they used to, or as much as the world gets affected by bad things happening. And it's still not easy, when you're walking with Jesus and when you're trying to do that, the bad times still come, but it's all about how you handle those bad times. Because if you have that eternal mindset, then you're focused more on the future than you are the present. Because sometimes the present can be challenging, the present can be hard, the present can get you down and get you depressed. But when you have that heavenly, eternal mindset, it's easier to push through the things. So like for me in my life, I can go back, all the way back to high school when I start thinking about this, of like the perspective that you bring into certain situations. Because, I went through a lot of, not necessarily hard times in life, but for me, I started from nothing, essentially, when I got into the business world. Similar to Alex, like we started with nothing. And a lot of times when you start from nothing, and you don't have, a big support group around you, it's easier to go through those valleys because you're learning as you go. Not only that, you don't really have a lot of capital to grow whatever you're trying to do. So when you grassroots something, that's when you really have to have the right mindset, the right perspective. That's why so many people quit.
Yeah.
Is because they can't have the good perspective and the gratitude even in the bad times. So when the bad times come, they just throw in that white towel and quit. So I think it's so critical for me. The spiritual side of this has been huge because we always talk about your why, and I have a really big why. So it's easier for me to, when the times are going bad, to look at the big picture, to look at what God's really doing. That's kind of what I've tried to trick my brain into doing.
No, you hit on something good there, and I'm going to address it. But I want to say this, who you are in the bad times, man, that almost shows everything you need to know about yourself, because when we go through these bad times, like you're either going to change and get better through it, or you're going to become a victim and get worse through it. Like there's all kinds of scenarios where you can put yourself there and think about handling it positively or handling it negatively. And when it comes to your present moment, like let's say you wind up in a spot that isn't necessarily that good. Well, when you're in the present, everything about your present has been formed by your past decisions.
That's right.
Like essentially today, where we're sitting at this table, everything that took us to get here was a decision today where we woke up and said, hey, we're going to podcast today. But it was a decision 3 years ago to say, hey, we're going to get in business with Dreambeard here and see if we can't make a video or two for farmers and real estate.
And the room we're sitting in, we had a big psych wall that we now have moved out there. So it's like
our past decisions made this present moment. And if you're upset about your present moment, then you need to realize that your present moment has been brought to you because of you. You need to take ownership for it and say, hey, the decisions I've made has brought me to this present moment. But you also have to realize that just because you're in this present moment, it has absolutely nothing to do with your future.
That's exactly.
It has no future implications. It has, like, who I will be at the age of 40. Sure, I can make choices today that start lining that up, but it has nothing to do with who I am at 30. Like, nothing.
Well, so many people are stuck in the past for so long. They're literally just, they can't, how many times do we hear people, oh, that's just the way I am. Oh, like I can't, and they're stuck in the past for their whole life, and they never move forward because they're always reminding themselves of their past failures, the way that they are. They think, oh, my parents are this way. This is the way I'm going to be my whole life. So they never get out of the past.
And you can call the past a lot of things. You can call it a challenge. You can call it this. You can call it that. Let's just call it the past, dude. Mm-hmm. The past is the past, and it is over.
That's right. And you can't, no matter how hard you think about it, you're not going to change it. So
I can't go back to 9th grade or 10th grade or any grade right now and do anything different. All I can do is go from now forward.
That's right.
That's why it's a strengthening thing for me to know that who I am at 50 has nothing to do with like being 30 years old right now. It has everything to do with the mindset I take forward into the next future days, like who I am tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that.
Yes.
It's very freeing. And the past, it's always going to stay there. Why do you think we grasp onto it so hard? Is it because we don't have anywhere else to go? Do we not try to give ourselves, like we have Google, we have all kinds of stuff. Like why do we get so hooked on the past?
Well, I think it's just like,
is it human nature?
I think it is, but I think it's also having a negative perspective on life, having this perspective that we're talking about. I think a lot of times we don't get out of the past because we don't think we can get out of the past. So many people in my life that you're talking to, they're like, man, this is just the way I am. I've been this way my whole life. And I say bullcrap to that. You are what you want to become. You are who you want to become. And you essentially, like Alex said, if you start making these little changes, eventually you get to the breaking point. That's what happened to me. Like talking about my health, I got to the point where I looked like an offensive lineman. And I was, pushing 260, and I had something click.
Were you playing football then?
No, I was just eating Martins every day.
No.
But I got big, and I hated the way that I was. But for me, I was like, man, this is just the way I am. I grew up, we just eat bad and this and that and all these negative things. And finally, one day, something clicked, and I was like, I don't have to live this way. I'm the one making the choice every day to feed my face and overeat and eat bad food. So I can make the change. That's the cool thing about free will, is that you control your own destiny, literally. So the past has nothing to do with the future if you will change. And you're the only one who can change you. That's the thing that I like about life, is that it's on me. I mean, we definitely deal with outside factors, but at the end of the day, I can control my perspective. I can control my attitude, and I can also control my work ethic.
And that, basically that right there though, is the difference in people who, kind of take initiative of their life and say like, hey, I can take ownership of this. I can take ownership.
Exactly.
Like you were in that valley and you're saying like, oh man, I'm getting too big. I'm getting hefty. Like I don't want to. But then that's where you made the change. That's where you make the choice. Like it's in the valley where the choice comes for you to move to the future.
Exactly.
It's that perspective of it being hard that makes it to where, oh, okay, now I've lost 20 pounds. Like, oh, okay, it's a little easier. Oh, okay, now I'll lose 40 pounds. Okay, it's a little easier. It's just like quitting drinking or nicotine for myself. I'm like, dude, I used to love nicotine. Honestly, I still kind of have moments where I want to love it again. I want to fall back in love with it.
Yeah.
But those hard times give me perspective for the times that are now easier to say no to those things. Like the hard times, the times where it was like literally I started like shaking thinking about it, to the point where now it's like just such an easy no. There was a lot in between that, but it was still, like you said, it comes down to it's just a choice.
That's right.
It's a choice I made.
And having that eternal mindset to some degree, like nicotine isn't going to serve you in the future with being there for your kid. Probably.
It won't serve me as a parent.
For me, nicotine took 3 of my grandparents, man.
Yeah.
And that's why I've never really been a big smoker, but look at that perspective shift. I tell people that all the time. They're like, you want a cigarette? I'm like, nah, I'm good, man. All 3 of my grandparents died from lung cancer. They smoked to the day they died, and they're like, oh wow.
And that's a perspective, that's a perspective shift in itself. So to wake up and say, all right, I kind of like nicotine, or to wake up and say, man, I lost 3 family members off of nicotine. There's a huge difference in how you frame that to your own mind as to what action you're going to take afterwards.
Yes.
If you're like, oh, that's not that bad, it's pretty fun, you're probably going to do it again. If you say, wow, it caused me to lose 3 of the people that I love the most, like, you're probably not going to want to do that again.
Pretty easy for me to not want to smoke.
So it makes sense. But and this stuff is why self-development is so important, dude. There was times in my life where I could not say no to it. I could not say no to, like, it could literally be a Monday at 6 o'clock, and it's like I had to work at 6:30, and you were like, do you want a beer? And I'd be like, yeah, I do. I think I need 3. Now that you mention it, I think I need 3, like, now.
Yes.
But basically, when I look back on that, that's why self-development is important, and looking back on how to take it from that first response to the second response that's actually going to benefit your future.
Yes.
That takes habit shifting. That takes stuff, and you have to be okay with each certain outcome. Like, if you're going to wake up and use, like, I'm using nicotine over and over, but if you're going to wake up and do an activity that maybe doesn't serve you the best, you have to be okay with the outcome. And if you can live with that, then maybe you need to reframe your entire dreams anyway.
Well, that's what I was going to make a point in this moment is, like, it's been so critical in my life, basically writing down the person that I'm trying to be, writing down my goals, writing down like trips that I want to go on, like putting it down on paper. And really the thing about putting it on paper is it's just like you're forcing yourself to think about it and write it down. But I think it's just critical to think about the person that you want to be, to think about the dreams, to think about the vacations, to think about the person that you want to have, the impact you want to have. We talk about it often of, like, how many people are going to show up to your funeral? Are you going to be the kind of guy that really help people along? And I was in the funeral home business for a little while, and there would be some funerals where 7 people would show up. So those little decisions that you make every day ultimately affect the overall impact that you're going to create on this world while you're here. And that's what I'm really focused on, is like, man, money, material, all that stuff is cool. But more than that, like, what is my impact on this world? What is my impact on people that are around me, people that work for me, people that go to church for me, my friends? Am I a positive impact on their life, or am I a negative impact? So many people in my life are really negative impacts on my life.
Honestly.
And I don't ever want to be that. I want to be like, man, Brent, you know, he's wild, but he's always positive. He's always lifting up. He's always doing these things. That's the kind of person that I'm focused on. And I'm writing that down, and I'm paying attention to it. So that's why you ultimately become what you want to be if you'll focus on it. And it takes time. Like, we're 4 years in, and we're starting to see these dreams and these visions come together after 4 years of busting our butts. So if I didn't have the big dreams, if I didn't have stuff that I'm looking at every day, I would have already quit. Wouldn't you?
Absolutely. And like you said, we're 4 years in, and that's 4 years of consistently every single day thinking, like, how can I improve? What could we do better? What could I do today? And not every day. Like, there are some weeks where, like, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you felt amazing, and Thursday was kind of slow, and Friday you were a piece of junk, like, compared to who you can be and your top potential. And what I'm saying is, not every day is going to be perfect.
No.
But absolutely, I would have quit if I would have not had such a strong why, such a strong reasoning. Or if I had not been able to look back on the past. Like, some people, like we said, get tied to the past. When I look at the past, man, the only thing I ever think about is how far I've come.
Yeah.
Every time I look at the past, I think about, like, oh, wow, like, when I was in high school, I thought this, and this. Well, and then I went to college and I was thinking like this. And then I became a business owner and I thought like this. And then now that we've owned a business, now I'm thinking like this. And it's just, every time I look back, I think about how far I've come. Even
that molding that we talked
going
about.
back to the molding, the potter and the clay, to God transforming my life through scripture and through work and through action. I just think about how far I've come, and you know, how far I've developed myself, and then also just like what my thoughts are even now compared to what they were a year ago. You think about how far you've come, and you think, man, I've conquered this before. Times start getting hard. I conquered this before. I've conquered something harder than this. God was there for me then. God's still there with me now.
That's right.
I'm going to get through this. But without the thoughts to begin with, you quit.
That's right.
You're right.
You gotta have the right thoughts.
Without these thoughts, man, because I'm alive now because I conquered before. Mm-hmm. I'm alive now doing what we're doing now. We're doing it now because we went through through stuff before
good
and bad to get here. So realizing that, knowing that's why we're here, it makes it easier to do it again.
That's right.
And again and again. Right.
And what you touched on something that I know we've talked about it probably on here before, but the moment when you actually started reading your Bible and seeking Christ, what had happened in your life? Because it was a valley.
Oh,
So share that with
absolutely.
people.
It was 2019, and in 2019, I had a really good friend of mine. He had just moved to California, and we had spent, but prior to 2018 and 19, we had spent probably, I don't know, man, probably like 7 years hanging out together. Like,
Almost every day.
yeah, because this is college age, high school, college age. I didn't have nothing to do.
Yeah.
All there was to do was party,
Yep.
party, hang out, do whatever we needed to. On the weekends. Like I worked in restaurants, so I could literally like make $200 that day, spend 180 of it that night, show up the next day, make another 100. So that's kind of where I was in life. And one of my friends, his name is Dylan Swanson. He moved to California, and after 3 months of living there, he actually passed away in a motorcycle accident. And I still remember the call. It was a Sunday morning. I got on Facebook and I saw where somebody that I was a mutual friend with of his had said that he had passed away. And I called one of my friends and I was like, man, I can't believe it. But like, I think he's gone. And it was probably 2 days later, I started thinking like, wow, if he's gone, what does that mean about all the times we partied together, all the times that we spent together? And like, did he go to heaven or did he go to hell? And to be honest with you, I had never even picked up a Bible, so I had no answers. I had nothing, and that's kind of what drove me into making that decision. But now looking back, I can see like how much it changes your perspective, how much it changed everything for me.
Yeah.
So the plain and simple is, I had a friend pass away, and I started peering into my spiritual side and saying like, what's there? Like, what's happening? What's going to happen to me if I died tomorrow? Yes. We've done a lot of things that weren't necessarily beneficial to this world. Like, what is going to happen to my soul if I die tomorrow?
Wow.
And
that was a perspective shift.
That was the mindset shift, the perspective shift.
That was that moment.
And once I started digging into that, I found out through reading that Bible, and I'll never be someone that just like drills it down your throat and says you got to do it or you're going to hell. I mean, it's what the book says. But what I noticed through reading it was how much moral difference it was making in my life. It's something very simple, but just love your neighbor. You know what I wanted to do to my neighbor? I wanted to cuss them out and slap them. Like, if they were being rude, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't that was my first instinct, was like, not love, but like, let's just either cuss them out or ignore them.
Yeah.
Like, let's do that. And it just starts changing your morals and changing where you're at. And now it makes you a better husband, a better father. I'm better at hiring people. I'm better at firing people. I'm better at doing every aspect of my life because I have the clarity and the goal of God, the vision. So,
and for me, man, that is the biggest perspective shift, is when you really fall in love with Jesus and you really start having that eternal lens. A lot of times we have the worldly lens on, take those off, put the eternal lens on, and it helps you treat people better. It helps you be a better person. Like he's saying, it helped him morally, ethically, all these things. Like, there's no negative side effect to it. So for me, that's one of the biggest perspective shifts that I've ever had, because I'm just filthy rags, and that Bible, that book, shows me God's grace time and time again, and then it helps me show other people grace.
And morally, once you start loving other people, it's funny what happens is you get better at loving other people, and there in turn, you get better at loving you.
Amen.
It's funny. I mean, it's just, and through that process, and that's why the whole Bible is about love, but through the loving process of loving God, then loving your neighbor, and then loving yourself, you begin to transform everything about like that, the daily actions you're taking, or it's really the thoughts. What it boils down to is your thoughts are changing more than anything. And when you change your thoughts and the mindset behind those thoughts is when you start really changing your life and and I can say the lives of the people around you.
That's impact right there.
And that's impact. So, which is why we're here. So, the last thing I want to say about getting your perspective down is, when it comes to living in the present moment and you make an action, like let's say that you're completely sober, let's say that you're not, whatever the action is, if you make an action that you don't necessarily agree with, you have to get to where you can accept it. The faster you accept it, the faster you can move on and change your future actions. Mm-hmm. All right. You also need to get better at being able to say what you need to say. A lot of times we get in valleys and we get in these weird spots and we don't know like how to communicate to people that we're hurting, or that we need to be vulnerable, or that something's going on. Dude, if you'll just say it and get it off your chest, just start saying something to someone, you'll begin to clearly process your thoughts inside quicker, more efficiently, all the above, and you'll finally understand what it is that's even bothering you to begin with. This is stuff I didn't know when I was like 20 years old. This is stuff I didn't know when I was younger. You need to learn how to communicate. You need to learn how to accept things and then also communicate things. And it'll take your perspective way further. You'll be able to get a better perspective because others will be able to give you better feedback off of what you're saying and things that you're feeling. So I just want to say, accept things that you can, get good at coming out with the outcome that you want to happen, like he mentioned earlier. Get good at writing these things down and really start trying to shift your mindset into who you want to become in the future. Start trying to change that perspective now. It doesn't happen overnight, but if you can start putting in little pieces of work that change, that remold you, that mold you into who God or who you want to be in the future, who you have the potential to be, make it happen. Make it happen.